Constitucional que cria o Ministério da Defesa. A CPI do narcotráfico houve...
Um prêmio Nobel da Paz que defende a guerra, ou pelo menos o bombardeio da OTAN contra a Iugoslávia. E logo ele, Elie Wiesel, um homem que conhece como poucos o sofrimento causado pelas guerras. Em 1944, os nazistas decidem deportar os 15 mil judeus que moravam na cidade onde Wiesel nasceu, na Transilvânia. Ele e a família são levados de trem para o campo de concentração de Auschwitz. Lá, Wiesel perde a mãe e uma das irmãs nas câmaras de gás. O pai morre como prisioneiro dos nazistas no campo de Buchenwald, de onde Wiesel foi libertado aos 16 anos em 1945. Como escritor, ele foi o primeiro a usar a palavra Holocausto para definir o extermínio dos judeus durante a Segunda Guerra Mundial. Depois de ver de perto estas imagens, Wiesel diz que ainda não entende como não enlouqueceu. 54 anos se passaram desde que o senhor deixou o campo de concentração. O senhor conseguiu entender já racionalmente o que aconteceu naquela época?
No, I knew how to deal with that, practically, but not truly. I still don't understand how it was possible for the whole community to disappear and for the world to be silent. The questions I had then are still valid, and I have no answers.
O senhor acha que houve uma conspiração do silêncio sobre o Holocausto durante a guerra, depois da guerra?
I don't know. At that time, in the free world, everybody knew. Everybody, except the victims in Hungary. Now, a conspiracy means an organized conspiracy. I must be honest, at that time there was war. And the Allies fought a great war. A just war, a valiant war. After all, Britain and America and so many other countries waged war against fascism, against Hitler, against brutality, against evil. Did they all want to keep us in a lack of knowledge, the conspiracy? I don't know. But the results were that we didn't know, which means 2 weeks before D-Day. When we came to Auschwitz, we didn't know what it meant being in Auschwitz.
Eu olhava recentemente uma foto do senhor feita um dia depois da liberação do campo de concentração onde o senhor estava. Como é que o senhor conseguiu sobreviver?
Only by chance. I would not say miracle because if God was good enough to perform a miracle for me, he could have performed a few miracles for others as well. And they were worthier than I, better than I. No, by chance. I have never done anything to survive. I wasn't strong enough, I wasn't courageous enough, I wasn't imaginative enough. As long as I was with my father, I knew why I wanted to live, for his sake. But when he died, I didn't want to live, I didn't live. And that's why in my first memoir, Night, the last few months in Buchenwald were a few pages, because I wasn't alive. And then it happened that I remained alive. But once I did survive, I tried to give it some meaning. At that time it had no meaning.
De tudo que o senhor já escreveu, um dos momentos mais tocantes é aquele em que o senhor descreve a libertação do campo de Buchenwald. Como é que foi aquele dia?
Well, April 11, the American army came in. And there was no joy, there was no dancing, there was no celebration. There weren't even tears, we didn't know how to cry. Some Russian war prisoners took American jeeps and went to Weimar, the nearby city, and they began giving vent to their frustration and killed a few people there. We didn't do that. All we could do is gather and say prayers, the prayer for the dead, say the Kaddish. And of course, that Kaddish still resonates in me. The first time I had said Kaddish in my life.
Como é que foi a reação do primeiro soldado americano que o senhor viu?
And when he saw us, he began cursing and weeping. I've never seen anyone weeping like that. And since then, I have a very soft spot for these soldiers who came to liberate us, who came from villages whose name I don't even know. And they came to give their lives, their days, their nights, their joy, their love, to save Europe. It was a great, great adventure in history.
Wiesel diz que tem uma dívida com a França, país que o acolheu depois da guerra. Órfão, estudou e tornou-se escritor em Paris. Passou a denunciar não só o Holocausto, foi à Argentina, ao Camboja, sempre atacando a intolerância e chamando a atenção para o sofrimento das vítimas. Ao entregar-lhe o Prêmio da Paz em 86, a Comissão do Nobel justificou. Wiesel despontou como um dos líderes espirituais e guias mais importantes numa época em que a violência, a repressão e o racismo continuam caracterizando o mundo.
This honor belongs to all the survivors, to their children, and to us, to the Jewish people.
O senhor já percorreu o mundo denunciando violações dos direitos humanos. Quando é que o senhor decide que uma causa merece atenção?
Usually the children, naturally the children. I identify with children so much because I have seen what happened to the children of my people. But I think of the helplessness of the children. I'm sure you know that, you must know that. You are in this field that every minute, literally every minute of the day, somewhere in the world a child dies of disease, starvation or violence. And that we can stop. When children die, that means their future is going away with them, which means the enemy deprives us of their future. And who knows, maybe among them there may be a future Nobel Prize winner in chemistry or in medicine, in biology, to discover a remedy for cancer. What we are doing to ourselves when we let it happen. And beyond them I see the helplessness of the victims that always touches me terribly. The helplessness, when they are waiting for someone to come and say, look, solidarity is more than a word.
Em Ruanda morreram 800.000 pessoas e não houve tanta atenção da mídia quanto em Kosovo. O senhor acha que é porque uma fica na África e a outra no coração da Europa branca?
Maybe, but I must say that this is something you should ask yourself. If CNN and Globo would show the pictures of Rwanda the same way you show the pictures of Kosovo, things would be different. So why don't you? Believe me, if I had seen the pictures of Rwanda, I would have screamed already then, and I have, because I have seen some pictures. But it's true that the media have not covered Rwanda the way they are covering Kosovo or Sarajevo before.
E no Oriente Médio, o senhor está otimista quanto a uma solução para os problemas entre Israel e os palestinos?
There will be peace between Palestinians and Israelis the next century, which means we are on it. On the threshold of that century, there is no doubt. It cannot go on.
A Palestinian state even?
If they decide, I think so. They are, whatever they will decide, but the way, the modality is for them to decide. But peace means what it means, meaning that both sides will agree on a schedule of events or of modalities. But I don't know what the end outcome will be, but it will be a peaceful outcome. There will be peace between them. I may be naive, but you know, why not?
A causa mais recente de Wiesel é a Guerra Civil na Iugoslávia. Na inauguração do Museu do Holocausto em Washington, fez um apelo para que o presidente Bill Clinton se envolvesse na Bósnia. Na época, imagens do Holocausto eram comparadas às dos muçulmanos perseguidos por sérvios e croatas. O senhor esteve na Bósnia durante a Guerra Civil lá. Dá para fazer algum paralelo com o que o senhor viveu durante a Segunda Guerra Mundial?
Elements, not of the Holocaust itself, but not like that, because when we were put in the train, we went to die. When these people are put in the train, they went to another place. Some of them died. But the goal was not to bring them to their death. No, I don't say that to diminish their pain, not at all. On the contrary, I'm taken by their pain. I'm overwhelmed by their pain. But at the same time, as a witness, and I believe that as a writer I'm a witness, I must be careful with words, therefore I don't use these words. But I'm not saying that in order to say they suffered less. I don't like comparisons. I don't like this. It's a game almost. I suffered more. We all suffered. And all suffering is bad. And we must come to the aid, to the help, and be in solidarity with of those who suffer. And what I have seen, of course, then was terrible, and what is happening now is terrible.
O senhor tem sido uma das vozes mais duras no apoio aos Estados Unidos e à OTAN nos bombardeios à Iugoslávia. Por quê?
I do it with a heavy heart. I'm against war. All my life, all my adult life, I've been against war. I know that war is always unjust, because war produces only victims. There are no victors in war. So I'm against it. I'm against violence. I'm against bloodshed. Believe me, I am. I wouldn't be who I am if I were for any act of violence. But when I saw the pictures here about Kosovo, I felt something must be done. Now, everything was tried, really, everything was tried. The last was Richard Holbrooke, who's a very good friend of mine, and he went a kind of last-minute attempt to have Milosevic stop the ethnic cleansing, and he didn't. So what else is there? I wish someone could tell me what. And I would say stop everything else, because if force may be used, it's only when nothing else could help. If there is a chance for anything else, I would say seize that opportunity. But I don't see anything else. Nobody has given me another alternative. What is the alternative? To keep quiet? No. To keep silent? Impossible.
O senhor conhece pessoalmente o Slobodan Milosevic. Que descrição que o senhor faria dele?
It's difficult to say that I saw in him a murderer. Look, I met him in London during a conference. I met him in Belgrade when I went there. I saw the man was... He's a maniacal, power-hungry man. All he wants is power. That means, if you push it to the extreme, he would like to rule over a cemetery. That's what he's doing. But to say that I immediately saw through his face that he is a killer, a mass killer, I didn't see that. I'm not that intelligent, perhaps, not so perceptive. But the fact is, what he is doing now, what he has done then, is very serious. And I really believe that when the story is done, and when the war is ended, he should be charged with crimes against humanity. There is no doubt, according to all the definitions, that what he has done in Kosovo now, to uproot almost 1 million people, is a crime against humanity.
E quando o senhor vê os refugiados deixando o Kosovo justamente por causa dos bombardeios da OTAN?
Well, again, I wish there was something else. But they are not fleeing because of the NATO bombing. They are fleeing because of Milosevic. Now, some commentators say that the bombing has accelerated the process. It's possible, I don't know. But I also know that it began before the bombing. The cleansing began before. The bombing came as a response to what he had done. He still has, I think he still has a duty towards his own people to stop it. He can, only he can.
O Brasil criticou muito os ataques da OTAN à Iugoslávia, dizendo que as Nações Unidas não foram consultadas. O senhor considera a opinião desses países?
They're sovereign countries, so I respect their ideas. But I don't know enough about what Brazil said. Did Brazil come out against Milosevic? Did Brazil denounce the ethnic cleansing? I hope so.
Yes, it did.
But maybe Brazil should have offered to mediate, maybe. It's very hard for me to tell things about this country, which Brazil, I think, is a democratic nation. One thing is clear to me. I'm thinking of the victims. I'm thinking of the victims in the hundreds of thousands who are waiting for us to do something. If you ask them, what do you think they would have said, to bomb or not to bomb? I don't know. My feeling is they would all say, go ahead, bomb. Naturally, to be so careful, we are not careful enough perhaps about the civilian sites in Belgrade, the Chinese embassy, which are horrible things, but maybe unavoidable. Who knows? That's why I'm against war, because it always produces this kind of human tragedies. But I'm waiting for somebody to tell me, look, this is what could be done, and therefore do it without war.
Vamos falar um pouquinho agora de literatura. O senhor disse que escreve mais como testemunha, que na verdade não é uma profissão.
Look, I've published 40 books already, but I've written very little about the Holocaust, 4 or 5 books, that's all. Because I'm still looking for the words, for the proper language to express the ineffable. I'm a witness because I think we all are witnesses. That is our goal, that is our mission in life, to be witnesses for each other. I am yours and you are mine, which means I'm a witness to your humanity as you are to mine. And what we have seen, meaning men and women of my generation, it is our mission to try to communicate our experience as witnesses. And this is what I meant really, that as a writer I'm a witness.
Nesta missão de escritor como testemunha, Wiesel é econômico nos detalhes sobre sua experiência pessoal nos campos de concentração. Ele diz que ainda vive assombrado pelas imagens do genocídio registradas em sua memória. O senhor disse também que escreve para não enlouquecer. Por quê?
True. Otherwise, normally, I studied psychopathology too. Normally, I should have gotten mad, lost my sanity. I was young, and any psychiatrist will tell you to go through such experiences means to face insanity. And to this day, to me it's a wonder how I managed to surmount all that and to emerge more or less a normal human being.
Muitos sobreviventes como o senhor acabaram cometendo suicídio. Como é que o senhor lidou com isso?
But I had moments of depression. But what I said, not many people, many writers who wrote about it committed suicide. Like Primo Levi, Tadeusz Borowski, and so forth. I can give you a whole list of writers who committed suicide. Paul Celan, Jerzy Kosinski. Good writers committed suicide. Because I imagine, because all of a sudden they felt that the language doesn't correspond to what it ought to do. It doesn't communicate.
O senhor ainda procura pelas palavras para escrever?
I'm still looking for the right language, the right words, the right mode, the right melody. Sure.
So we can expect many more books from you?
Or not at all. It's also possible.
O senhor disse que tem muitas superstições como escritor. Quais são?
Oh, meaning when I write with a pen, when I finish a book, I change pens. And these kind of things, you know, I write 4 hours a day, and I study a lot, and then when I finish a manuscript, I don't give it to the publisher, I have to begin another one.
You don't use a computer?
I don't know how, no.
E o correio eletrônico, como é que o senhor lida com isso?
I don't deal with it. First of all, I stopped email. My secretaries one day came up to me in Boston and said, "Do you know, Professor, that you have hundreds of letters on email?" I said, "I want a message. Professor Wiesel does not accept email because it's too easy." If somebody writes, I answer every single letter. I answer every letter, especially about children. I get around 100 letters from children a month. I answer all of them. But email is not for me. I belong to the 19th century.
Mesmo assim, o nome do senhor aparece em milhares de endereços da internet, principalmente de grupos nazistas. Como é que o senhor encara isso?
I know that I am their enemy, naturally. You have no idea. I get so many threats to my life. And occasionally, they are so serious that I'm getting security and things like that, because for them, I'm the chosen enemy, naturally. And I would never debate them. I would never grant them the dignity of a debate.
E muitos desses grupos não reconhecem que tenha havido o Holocausto.
So what can I say? They are sick. These are sick people. Just as there are mentally sick people, there are morally sick people. These are morally sick people. We are still here. And they tell us that I haven't suffered, that my parents weren't killed. You must be crazy. I mean, morally crazy to say that.
Recentemente, depois de assistir ao filme A Vida é Bela, eu ouvia um grupo de adolescentes discutir a questão do Holocausto e eles perguntavam uns aos outros, será que aconteceu? Será que isso foi tão mal assim mesmo? Como é que o senhor reage a esse tipo de comentário?
Of course they bother me, but it's part of life. But as the farther we go from the experience, of course, the more it encourages, it enables people to ask these questions. But what can I do? Write more and teach better.
Aquela tragédia no Colorado, os adolescentes que massacraram colegas na escola. Eles eram brancos, supostamente bem educados, tinham saúde, tinham dinheiro, bem alimentados, falavam em Hitler. Como é que o senhor encarou isso?
Which means they don't know what Hitler is. That's absolutely a catastrophe in education. That means they don't know what Hitler did to his own people. That he actually destroyed many generations of Germans.
E o que é possível fazer para combater essa situação?
Education. I don't know the answer, you know, to any substantive, essential question. I know one thing, that whatever the answer is, education is its major component.
Qual é o grande medo do senhor para o século XXI?
Indifference. I'm afraid of people's indifference, because it's so easy to be indifferent, not to be involved, not to care, not to feel hurt. It's very easy to be indifferent, and that is a danger.
Nos seus artigos mais recentes, o senhor tem denunciado muito o fanatismo.
That is the active danger, the active evil, fanaticism with power. Imagine a fanatic group with nuclear power, or with bacteriological power, what they can do. And fanatics, unfortunately, in every single religion, the group that grows fastest is the fanatic group, including my own religion, the Jewish religion.
Mais de 50 anos depois do fim da guerra, aprendeu-se alguma coisa?
Yes and no. Yes, individually we have learned things. But in the 30s, there were very few human rights groups in the world. Today there are more than 2,000. What does it mean? That individuals no longer trust their governments, but at least they want to do something. Many of my students go to the Peace Corps, to other humanitarian agencies. That means they have learned something.
So you see reasons for hope?
They must be.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.